In war, when all else are equal, the bigger number will always win. But realistically, no war is ever equal. From ship designs, hyperlane layouts, heck, even the arrangement of your star bases and planets in relation to each other matter. So I think it's necessary to go back to the very basics. First, the basic pattern of weapons in relation to their ship slots and other very important combat mechanics. These will be very useful later when talking about ship designs. 1. The smaller the weapon, the higher the tracking, at the cost of lower damage and range. But the accuracy does not go up nor down no matter the change in weapon size. What's tracking and accuracy? Tracking directly reduces the chance to miss due to enemy evasion, while accuracy, if below 100%, relates to the chance to miss in all shots, even if the enemy has 0 evasion. 2. One large slot is equivalent to 2 medium slots, and 1 medium slot is equivalent to 2 small slots. If you use this conversion, then a large slot is equivalent to 4 small slots. This gets really complicated when we start talking about other slot types though. Roughly speaking, strike crafts are equivalent to large slots. Torpedoes and swarmers are equivalent to medium slots, while normal missiles and PDs are equivalent to small slots. Now, keep in mind some weapons are locked to a set weapon size, so these conversions are just rough estimates for combat effectiveness, as each slot size works differently, but still useful to keep in mind. 3. By using the previous conversion rates and putting a value of 1 on small slots, 2 on medium slots, and 4 on large slots, we can see that every ship in the game has an allotted slot count that is always the same, no matter what ship section you use. The only difference being the ratios of slot types a ship has. 4. Conventional large slot weapons, or artillery as we call them, tend to always have minimum range and massive first strike volleys, allowing them to be extremely deadly in long range, while firing arcs only matter when the ship is fighting multiple groups of enemy fleets in different positions. Minimum range makes artillery weapons generally terrible at short range. There's an exception to this though, which are missiles and swarmers. They don't have any minimum range, but instead have very low damage first strike volleys. But you know what else has missiles? War Thunder. Honestly, a good game. The most comprehensive combined arms combat game ever made. What if you have the sudden compulsion to point a giant barrel towards your fellow man? Well, now you can. Each module is modeled down to its very components, from turrets, tracks, ammunition, and of course, the squishy humans themselves. You can specifically target an enemy's magazine to explode, or even target the humans and make them into... Just don't think about the gruesome details. Depending on where you shoot, there's a different chance of killing the vehicle. You see that plane? Yeah, no. Dive into intense PvP battles around the world with thousands of historically accurate tanks, planes, and ships. So play War Thunder now for free on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation using the link down below to enjoy these high-flying adventures yourselves. Back to overanalyzing a space game. 5. Kinetic and energy weapons land instantly when fired, while strike crafts, missiles, and torpedoes are quote-unquote delayed hit, meaning it takes time for the damage to travel between the weapon and the enemy, in exchange for not having the chance to miss. In this time to travel, they can be stopped by countermeasures such as point defense or flak. It can also be observed that this travel time is a massive disadvantage in battle, because while instant hit weapons completely stop a portion of the enemy fleet from dealing damage, delayed hit weapons allow the enemy to deal damage even when they are marked for death, so to speak. 6. Weapon damage values are in effect roughly the same across all weapons if we use basic kinetic and energy weapons as an anchor. If lower on average, it likely has special abilities and or weaknesses. For example, missiles have slightly lower damage and weak against PD, but have excellent range while bypassing shields. Strike crafts have full tracking and full accuracy while bypassing shields, in exchange for not dealing full damage at the start of battle, and instead taking time to ramp up. And if the enemy were to have flak, this ramp up will take much much longer. Torpedoes have abysmal range and abysmal damage while vulnerable to being shot down, in exchange for multiplicative damage against bigger ships and a gigantic alpha strike, able to take down the biggest of ships in just a few shots. Especially with the bonus damage against armor, these things are absolutely terrifying. Disruptors have low damage and range but bypasses shields and armor, reducing enemy fire rate immediately while prematurely triggering enemy disengagement. But any form of hardening will severely hamper both of these abilities, likely resulting in a loss. 7. Hardening modules for both shields and armor work by making a percentage of the damage that would have bypassed them to be unable to, but this requires the corresponding shield or armor to be available to absorb the damage. If there is none left, the damage will go through anyway. For example, someone running an armada with triple shield hardening is fighting disruptors.
If the enemy were to build some shield busting artillery to cover the hard,
Man, even I'm getting sleepy explaining all of this. Wait, no, don't leave yet. That's just the basics. Intermission. Now that you understand those basic rules, what about the basics of the ships themselves? For simplicity's sake, we can ignore the differences in stats and focus on how the slot count on a ship is always the same per naval cap if adjusted using point 2 and 3. What makes every ship different then? It's their ability to have more of a slot type per naval cap. For example, frigates are extremely efficient for torpedoes, as each one naval cap can handle 1 torpedo, while cruisers in comparison need 4 naval cap to handle just 3 torpedoes. The total slot count in both cases are still the same if we use the standardized conversions. Cruisers will have less torpedoes but more missiles instead. We can see the same for battleships when it comes to large slots and carriers, destroyers for point defenses, corvettes for small slots, and finally cruisers again for medium slots. But still keep in mind the fact that the more variety in ship sections, the more flexible a ship is. Flexibility is extremely important as a single retrofit can change the function of a ship completely. This is especially true when you're dealing with multiple enemy forces, which likely will have their own unique strengths and weaknesses. The ability to specialize into one thing is amazing if you're running a mono fleet. In other words, an armada consisting of mostly one ship type. But this is obviously a terrible idea if the enemy were to have a long time to prepare, as they can just build hard counters to destroy you. So what do? Adapt. Wait, you still haven't explained any of the other ship components. Alright, to understand further, we'll need to talk about the more advanced points. 8. The basics of combat computers. Torpedo gets up close and personal to deliver the explosive message, only usable for, well, torpedo ships, and that includes cruisers. Swarm, similar as torpedo computers, but will not do strafing runs, and instead they just stay close to the enemy for the entire battle. Picket, the high tracking combined with its tendency to stay in medium range means it hard counters any evasive ship in the entire game. The main drawback being, well, that battleships and frigates can't use them. Line stays in a, well, line, increased chance to hit, and a tendency to stay in formation. Actually superior than a picket computer as long as you don't face all-out evasion ships, because chance to hit is dual purpose in that it reduces the chance to miss from low accuracy and adds to the chance of hitting after evasion is subtracted from tracking. Artillery, increased range and fire rate, will stay at the longest weapons range unless there's a shorter range weapon, good for, well, artillery. More specifically, strategies that involve running away from the enemy while shooting. This move can be done using L-slots, missiles, or heck, even carriers. Just keep in mind that it uses the median range of all mounted weapons as the designated range the ship will hover on. So a carrier or artillery-based ship containing a bunch of short-range weapons may have issues of inconsistent to straight-up terrible combat performance. Carrier, perfect for carriers. I don't know what you expect expected. Look at that increased engagement range. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret though. This is actually useless in battle apart from earlier deployment of strike crafts. Minuscule but still impactful. How useful is this? Very useful actually. The increased engagement range applies fleet-wide. So in theory, you could just have one carrier computer for an entire fleet full of artillery ships to prevent enemies from running away, and if you're running strike crafts, to launch your fighters earlier. Starbase and platform. Exclusive to, well, starbases and platforms. High tracking and fire rate. Absolutely terrifying when combined with the range module on the starbase, as they can just demolish both small and big ships no matter what weapon system you have. Ignore. Special to only the Colossus. Will follow its assigned task and, well, ignore everything else. 9. Combat targeting priorities in relation to ship sizes, evasion, and distance. Here are some wiki screenshots as a reference. Keep in mind the targeting system is random and uses weights, so what I say will be in order of importance. The bigger the ship, the higher the priority. The closer the ship, the higher the priority. The lower the ship health, the higher the priority. Also, unarmed ships such as army transports and civilian ships will have practically zero priority. There is also a mechanic that allows ships to change targets, so don't rely on them too much. High tracking ships will tend to target high evasion ships. Battleships or larger tend to not target high evasion ships. 70% evasion to be exact. Now, it says here that ships will be less likely to shoot at starbases, but that's a complete lie. Starbases count as a gigantic ship equal to or larger than a battleship. This usually screws over kiting combat computers when present in any battle, as they will kite against the starbase instead of the enemy fleet that's killing them right then and there. 10. On how regen components are useless within combat. Regen components are actually really useful outside of combat in allowing your ships to keep moving and never needing to repair, effectively accelerating an invasion ever so slightly, as there is no actual need to dock and repair after a battle. Or in the case of a retreat, ships actually regen while in MIA. When they come out, they're ready to fight at full health again immediately. Basically, their main ability is to reduce downtime, not as a way to win battles. Let me explain. If you put this on big ships, they get focused down, knocking them out of battle instantly, not even letting any of the regen to ever take place. If you put this on small ships, they heal practically no damage because hey, it's percentage based, and guess what? Small ships don't have much to begin with. And here's a funny joke. Regen is cut by a huge amount when in combat. Haha. Yeah, that's not a joke. Also, before the hull is damaged, the module only provides half the value. All of this combined results in this hilarious regen admiral. You see how much he's healing per day? Yeah, he's practically taping the gaping holes in these spaceships. Regen components are one thing, but this? Actual dead weight. I have to also mention that A slots are extremely powerful. As I have explained on another video, they can either increase the base speed of a ship, which then gets multiplied by other modifiers, or adds chance to hit, which if you've paid attention is actually a rather terrifying statistic. With this, we can safely say they're effectively useless when in battle. Still alright for reducing downtime though. 11. Fair nightly combat is cool and all, but that doesn't exactly help you win. Let's learn the rather unknightly concept of jabaiting. What is it in essence? Trickery and a little bit of cannon fodder. Okay, this is probably gonna break a few Geneva suggestions, but small, cheap, high evasion ships that can take the brunt of the enemy first strike volley. These ships can be corvettes, destroyers, or even army transports. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. Depending on the enemy position and designs, they can either be overpowered or completely useless. When defending, you put them next to the warp point to be cannon fodder, while your ships bombard from afar. This even works for short-range weapons as well. Just make sure to position your ships slightly further back to not get targeted instead of the distractions. Now, what if you want to instead attack a position with this trick? You warp them in first as cannon fodder, of course, and then your fleets with a delay of a few days, ideally by hotkey, to be sent to sweep the rest. What this does is completely free your ships from any risk of a devastating strike that may come from artillery, torpedoes, battles, or heck, even defense platforms. Just keep in mind these basic debating rules. If there are any other military ships in range when using armies, nope. If there are any bigger ships in range when using corvettes, nope. If for some reason the enemy's using fast reload weapons, nope. As long as you do that, you'll win battles even with less naval cap. 12. Disengagement, reload times, and how both relate to lethality and war exhaustion. The higher the reload time, the higher the damage per shot will be. Think of it like this: a ship that's disengaged can retreat, repair, and fight again. A ship that's dead is gone forever. How is this related? Well, the higher the reload time, the higher the likelihood of outright killing an enemy ship without ever letting them disengage, as a ship has to be below 50% health and above 1 HP to roll any disengagement chances. In essence, the higher damage per shot means less enemy disengagement, which means more enemy ship deaths, which also mean more war exhaustion for the enemy. 13. Ship speed is directly related to your reinforcement speed. Why is this important? Because quick employee turnover is a huge part in a long drawn-out conflict. Think of it like this: after multiple battles and subsequent retreats, even if the defender's the one retreating again and again, the attacker will be with a numerical disadvantage, simply from having most of their ships stuck in transit. Things arriving in a year compared to 2 can be the difference between being attrition to death or cementing your foothold in the newly acquired ground. But if you're on the defense, then your goal is to simply fight again and again until you have the numerical advantage. Just remember to set your retreat point far away from the point of engagement. 14. Here's some empire structure tips. A. Build multiple shipyards. Spread them out and make sure they're not in jump range of one another. B. Build multiple gateways. Spread them out and make doubly sure this time that they're not in jump range of one another. Fail in this and you might lose all of your gateways in a blink of an eye. C. Build fortresses on every world you have, no exceptions. They are there to buy time for you to react and repair your ships in the event of losing a battle. Imagine if someone declares war on you and you're literally on the other edge of your empire. You might lose half your planets by the time you arrive. This move somewhat prevents that. Now, I swear this is the last one. Wow, this is so long. 15. Cloaking, surprise surprise, is terrible. There's really not that much use to them because getting high level detection is extremely cheap compared to the cost of high level cloaking. One detector station costing a meager amount to build would just hard counter any cloaking with such a ridiculous cost efficiency that it's almost laughable, unless you're exclusively using level 1 cloaking tactical ability to sneak up and ambush people on the defense. Detector stations are only useful when there's a cloaked ship in range, right? There is literally no point in getting high-level cloaking, especially on the defense. Sure, the malices of low-level cloak strength is huge, but quickly dissipates once outside of cloak, so it isn't much of an issue as long as you have good positioning, deception, and are capable of executing an overall strategy. Remember, for the enemy, this is all they see: a small puny fleet running away from them. Once they take chase and get lured in, just select all your ships and right-click the enemy. This will disengage cloaking and start the battle, giving no warning whatsoever. If all else fails, just target the enemy's ground armies. It's very unlikely that they will be escorted all the time. This will keep economic damage restricted to just bombardment. While not ideal, it's much better from outright losing planets. Keep in mind, this is all useless if the enemy has full intel on you. So, unless you're fighting some super spy master empire, this strategy is a good way to fight a superior enemy that conventional tactics might just find impossible to defeat. These videos take a lot of time. Look at the video length. So I would really appreciate it if you downloaded War Thunder using the link down below. It helps the channel a lot. You should also like and subscribe. Yeah, I'm just doing the YouTube meta now. I also have to thank you Alaya West, Jerbear, and the others on Patreon for the generous support. I honestly couldn't have done it without you all. The next upload maybe this month, maybe.